There's a question no one wants to ask. What if that dream retirement never comes? What if, when you finally have time, you no longer know who you are? Carl Jung observed something disturbing about the human mind. He discovered that most people live their entire lives wearing a mask, what he called a persona. You wake up every day and put on the role of the responsible worker, the self-sacrificing parent, the model citizen. But where are you in this charade? Jung realized that this social mask is not just a temporary disguise. It becomes a prison so comfortable that you forget you're trapped. And the cruelest part, you build this prison with your own hands, believing you're being responsible. Look around you. How many people do you know who are truly alive? Not just breathing, walking, producing, alive. How many have that sparkle in their eyes that says, "I choose to be here"? The answer is frightening. The truth is that we have been sold a sophisticated lie. We were told that first you fight, then you live. That at 65, when your body starts to fail, when your passions have been replaced by medication and doctor's appointments, then you will be allowed to be happy. But Jung knew something that the world prefers to ignore. When you spend decades living through a mask, there comes a time when you can no longer take it off. You look in the mirror and don't recognize who is there when no one is watching. What if I told you that there is a psychological explanation for this silent epidemic of empty lives? What if what you think about responsible living is causing exactly the opposite of what you seek? Jung called it persona, the mask you wear to fit the world's expectations. But here's the problem. That mask started as a tool and became an identity. Think about your last week. How many times did you say, "I'm fine," when you knew you weren't? How many times did you smile out of obligation? How many times did you act to avoid disappointing someone, completely betraying how you really felt? That's not maturity. That's systematic self-betrayal. Jung realized that when we live only through the persona, something terrible happens. We lose touch with our authentic essence. You become a walking function, the efficient worker, the self-sacrificing parent, the stable partner, the available friend. But where is the real person in that list of roles? The system loves this. It applauds when you don't question, when you don't break the cycle, when you do exactly what is expected of you. And you do this because you want to belong, because for years you've been told that this is what it means to mature. But growing up isn't betraying yourself. Growing up isn't putting your soul on pause while you keep the character going. There's a devastating psychological cost to living in character mode. You lose your spontaneity, that ability to react authentically to the world. You lose your curiosity, because function people don't ask inconvenient questions. You lose real connection, because you can't genuinely connect with someone when you're not present yourself. And worst of all, you lose the ability to recognize yourself. Jung observed that his most unhappy patients weren't the ones with obvious problems. They were the ones who had built perfect lives from a social standpoint, but felt dead inside. They had everything the world said would make them happy, but there was a void that no external success could fill. Do you know why? Because you can't be happy living someone else's life. And when you wear a mask for so long, you are essentially living the life the world expects of you, not your own. The persona should be a tool, something you consciously use in specific contexts. But what happens is that it becomes a way of life. You wake up in the morning and automatically put on the mask. You go to sleep at night and it's still stuck to your face. Jung discovered something even more disturbing. The persona doesn't just hide who you are from others. It hides who you are from yourself. You spend so much time playing the part that you forget you're playing a part. The mask merges with your face, and then that terrible moment arrives. You look in the mirror and don't know who you are when no one is looking. You ask yourself, who am I when I don't have to please anyone? When I don't have to produce anything? When I don't have to live up to anyone's expectations? The answer scares you. Because you've discovered that you've spent so much time being what others wanted you to be that you've forgotten who you really are. But Jung knew that this wasn't just an individual problem. It was a cultural problem. An entire society built on people who gave up their essence in exchange for social approval. A civilization of actors who forgot they were acting. And now you understand why so many people reach 65 feeling empty. They didn't spend decades building a life. They spent decades playing a role. And when the curtain finally falls, When there is no audience left to impress, they discover that there is nothing left beneath the mask. Here's the cruel irony. You sacrifice your authenticity in the name of security and stability. But in the end, what do you get? A life you don't recognize as your own. An existence that feels like it was lived by someone else. Jung called this psychological death. When you are biologically alive, but psychologically dead. When you function but don't feel. When you produce but don't live. But here's the question Jung asked that no one wants to answer. What happens when you realize your whole life has been a performance? When you understand that you sacrificed your authenticity in the name of a future that may never come? More importantly, is there still time to take off the mask? The biggest lie they sold you is that freedom is for old people. That at 65, when your body starts to fail, when your passions have been replaced by medications and doctor's appointments, then you will be allowed to be happy. Think about it. They convince you to sacrifice the best years of your life when you have energy, health, desire, in exchange for a promise that no one can guarantee, a promise that may never be fulfilled. Jung understood something that our culture refuses to accept. The human brain was not designed for happiness. It was designed for survival. And that's why it's always anticipating danger, postponing pleasure, seeking stability even if it costs you your well-being. Your mind has become a golden cage. You are alive, but not awake. You move, but you don't advance. You breathe, but you don't live. And you know what's most disturbing? You've gotten used to it. You've made resignation your refuge. You've confused security with meaning. You've accepted that your time is worth less than your salary. You've believed that being responsible is synonymous with giving up. But here's the reality that no one wants to face. The future is not guaranteed. And living in anticipation is a slow way to die. The promise of 65 is a sophisticated control system. You are told that now is the time for sacrifice, that you fight first and live later, that all good things are at the end of the road. But what if that end never comes? Jung observed that his most distressed patients were not those facing obvious crises. They were the ones who followed the script perfectly. Study, work, marry, buy, work more, shut up, endure, and in the end ask themselves, is this all there is? You are fulfilling everyone's expectations, except your own. And for how long? Because here comes the question no one wants to ask. What if that dream retirement never comes? What if when you finally have time, you no longer have your health? What if when you can finally rest, you no longer know who you are? The truth is that we live our lives putting off joy, rest, love, travel, art, risk, as if life had a trial mode and a final mode, as if there were a second chance, as if the present didn't matter. But the present is the only thing that is real. The future is a hypothesis. The past is a shadow. Jung realized that the unhappiest people were those who had turned waiting into a way of life. They waited for Monday to pass, for Friday to arrive, for their obligations to end, for the economy to improve, for their children to grow up, for someone to appreciate them, for a raise, for the storm to pass, for vacation to arrive. And while they waited, life slipped through their fingers. The problem is not that you don't have time. The problem is that you give it away without realizing it. You abandon it in routines that don't fulfill you, in jobs that don't define you, in commitments that drain you. Do you know how many talents have been extinguished by fear? How many stories remain unwritten? How many paintings unpainted? How many songs unwritten? How many I love yous unsaid? How many passions unexplored? All because you keep waiting for the perfect moment. And meanwhile, the clock keeps ticking. Every minute that passes is gone forever. Every opportunity you let slip away is lost forever. And the longer you wait, the further you get from yourself. Jung knew that this later you long for is a trap, a mirage, an excuse disguised as a plan. Because here's the brutal truth. No one is going to come and give you permission to live. No one is going to say, okay, now this is the perfect moment. Because that moment doesn't exist. Life has no pauses, no advance warning, no guarantees. It only has moments, and you are letting them slip away. You are waiting to turn 65 to discover that you spent your whole life preparing to live, but forgot to live. That you built a perfect existence on paper, but one that was empty in essence. And then you understand why Jung said that the greatest tragedy is not death, but a life not lived. Because when you finally realize that the future you sacrificed everything for was just an illusion, it may be too late to recover who you really are. Jung discovered something disturbing about waiting. It not only consumes time, it devours identity. While you wait for the right moment, the right person, the right opportunity, something inside you quietly dies. You don't realize it, but every day you spend living for tomorrow is a day you become a little stranger to yourself. Waiting is not neutral. It has a psychological cost that no one has told you about. Think about the last time you did something spontaneous, not something planned, approved, or productive. Something that just sprang from within you because you were alive in that moment. Most people can't answer without feeling a knot in their chest. You know why? Because you've been trained to be successful, but not to be at peace. To compete, but not to feel. To build goals, but not meaning. Waiting kills spontaneity. When you're always preparing to live, you forget how to live. When you're always planning the next step, you lose the ability to be present in the current step. Jung observed that his patients who suffered the most were those who had optimized their lives for efficiency, but completely lost touch with the moment. They knew exactly where they wanted to go, but had no idea where they were. And here's the cruel paradox. You sacrifice your authenticity in the name of security. But in the end, what do you get? A life you don't recognize as your own. An existence that seems to have been lived by someone else. Waiting disconnects you from curiosity. People who live waiting stop asking inconvenient questions. They stop exploring. They stop being surprised. They become machines executing plans, not human beings living experiences. You lose the ability to connect in a real way. Because you can't genuinely connect with someone when you're not present yourself. When you're always mentally on to the next appointment, the next goal, the next problem to solve. Jung realized that waiting creates a specific form of suffering. You are biologically alive, but psychologically absent. You function, but you don't feel. You produce, but you don't live. And the most terrible thing is that you get used to it. You normalize disconnection. You accept that this is how things are. You anesthetize your soul until it no longer hurts not to live. But Jung knew that this anesthesia comes at a price. Every day you spend on autopilot is a day you can't get back. Every moment you let slip away while waiting for the right moment is a moment that never comes back. Waiting turns you into a spectator of your own life. You watch the days go by as if you were watching a movie. You are there, but you don't participate. You see, but you don't feel. You exist, but you don't experience. And then that moment of terrible clarity arrives. You realize that you've spent years, maybe decades, living as if it were a rehearsal for real life. As if there were a moment in the future when everything would finally begin for real. But there is no rehearsal. This is the performance. This is your life happening right now while you wait for it to begin. Jung understood that waiting is not just a postponement. It is a form of denial. You deny that the present is enough. You deny that you are enough. You deny that your current needs are valid. And that denial eats away at you. You begin to feel disconnected, not only from the world, but from yourself. You look in the mirror and don't recognize who is there. You wonder where the person you were before you learned to wait went. Waiting teaches you to distrust your own desires. You learn that what you want right now isn't important. That what you feel right now isn't valid. That what you dream of right now must be postponed. And little by little, you stop wanting. You stop feeling. You stop dreaming. Jung called this psychological death. When you are technically alive, but essentially dead. When you breathe, but you don't live. When you function, but you don't feel. And here's the question no one wants to ask. What is left of you after decades of waiting to live? What is left of your essence after years of denying your deepest desires? The answer is scary. A shell remains. A person who knows how to perform routines, but has forgotten how to feel joy. Who knows how to fulfill obligations, but has forgotten how to follow passions. Who knows how to be productive, but has forgotten how to be alive. Jung knew that the greatest rebellion is not against the world. It's against the version of yourself that the world has created. The revolution that matters doesn't happen in the streets. It happens the moment you decide to stop asking permission to be who you really are. But here's the truth that no one has told you. You don't have to give up everything to start living. You don't have to sell your possessions, quit your job, or run away to an island. Those are escapist fantasies. The real revolution is more subtle and more powerful. It begins when you regain conscious control over your choices. When you stop living on autopilot and start asking yourself, with every gesture, every decision, does this bring me closer to myself or further away? Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming who you really are, not who others expect you to be. It's not about being different for the sake of being different. It's about being authentic because it's necessary. Sometimes all it takes is a no at the right time. Sometimes a walk without your cell phone. Sometimes a conversation without masks. Sometimes writing what you feel without filters. The silent revolution is about giving space to that inner voice you've been stifling for so long. It's about asking yourself what you really want, not what you think you should want. It's about reconnecting with what made you feel alive before you learned to be afraid. You have the right to rethink your path, to change direction midway, to say, "This isn't working for me anymore," without having to justify it with tears or drama. It's enough that it's true for you. Jung understood that we were raised to uphold structures, not to listen to ourselves. That's why it hurts so much when you realize you've lived your life to please everyone but yourself. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you feel it, you can't go back. The quiet revolution isn't about destroying your life. It's about taking conscious breaks. It's about regaining the inner voice you've silenced for so long. It's about asking, without fear, who would I be if I didn't have to answer to anyone? And no, it's not selfishness, it's honesty. Because if you don't choose yourself, no one else will do it for you. You have the right to live a life that feels like your own. You have the right not to wait. You have the right to make mistakes, to explore, to change your mind. You have the right not to have everything planned out, to improvise, to discover who you are along the way. Jung knew that in the end, no one remembers how you paid the bills. No one applauds you for breaking your back in the name of stability. What remains, the only thing that remains, are the moments when you were yourself. Fully, completely, vibrantly. The silent revolution is about understanding that happiness is not a destination. It is a way of walking, and the time to start is now. Not tomorrow, when you have time. Time is not had, it is taken. Not later, when the situation improves. The situation doesn't get better. You improve your relationship with it. Not when you feel ready. You'll never feel ready. You make yourself ready by doing. Jung realized that most people are only alive biologically, breathing, walking, producing, but without feeling, without listening to themselves, without questioning themselves, just repeating patterns that others have created for them. You can't afford to be just another one, not you. If you've come this far, it's because there's a crack inside you, a doubt, an echo, something that doesn't fit, something asking to come out. Don't ignore it. This discomfort is the prelude to transformation. This restlessness is the truth knocking at your door. Jung said that the greatest sin against the soul is to live a life that is not your own. And you know, deep down, you've always known that this life you're living isn't completely yours. That there are parts of you that have never seen the light of day. That there are dreams you buried so deep that you forgot you ever had them. But they're still there, waiting. Not for permission, not for guarantees, not for security, waiting for courage. The silent revolution begins when you understand that you only have one life. There is no beta version. There is no backup. And every day that you let pass does not freeze, does not wait for you, does not recover. Jung knew that the greatest tragedy is not death. It is reaching the end and realizing that you never really lived. That you spent your whole life rehearsing for a show that never happened. But today, right now, could be the day when everything changes. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be grand. It can be simple. It can be silent. It can just be you deciding that you're not going to wait any longer. The world doesn't need a more efficient version of you. It needs a more alive version.
If you've made it this far, you've already taken a step beyond most people. You're subscribed to the channel, you watch the videos, you reflect on every idea. Now the question is, how far do you want to take this? If you want to take the next step and truly apply this knowledge to your life, the White Rabbit Codes is ready for you. The link is in the pinned comment. Remember, success is a decision. The choice is yours. Count on me and follow the White Rabbit.